Hello, my band of crew, and welcome back. We are here with JB,
Allegedly.
allegedly. This
Yeah.
is season 2, episode 2. We're going to be talking about all the different locations that Crash Bandicoot has traveled in his adventures and where we wish he would end up. So, before we get into that, what is your favorite location that Crash has ever been to? Whether it
Uh,
be a time zone, a universe, a planet, and then or just specifically on a planet.
uh, I always like the castle, Cortex Castle, not the one in Warped.
Yeah.
Um, I also like Bermugula, but
So you
I
like this?
don't.
You like the science fictiony portions of the castle rather than just like the castle aesthetics. So you like?
It's very specifically Cortex Castle.
Okay. Yes.
Um,
Yes. Okay. And then for me, I'm always liking futuristic stuff. So I like the future tense level that we got, future frenzy, all those the futury levels in Crash Warped, and then even just going to places on Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled where we had like all the futuristic cities. So I can't really pinpoint which one I like the best, but you know they had a lot of futuristic cities in that. But yeah, so that was,
yeah,
and then
the the purple place. For some reason, I'm drawing a blank on the name. Electron Avenue.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, where there's the big jump, and then you have all the neon signs and stuff. I loved it.
A lot of people were like pissy that they made it more unique compared to the other Techne levels, but I did not. I
Yeah, I
liked it better the
enjoyed.
way they did it.
I That's a kind of getting on a tangent. That's what I loved about Nitro Fueled. How they took all of the levels from Nitro Kart and they made them like their own. Like when you played the original Nitro Kart, they really just felt like they were redoing the CTR tracks. But then when they came on Nitro Fueled, they got like a whole fresh new coat of paint.
They were also kind of a little in the original Nitro Kart. They were also kind of a little homogenous to each other, even. So
Yeah, like each
like
hub,
all of yeah.
each.
So that kind of gets addressed in Nitro Fueled.
So now we're gonna go over just like Crash and like I said, where he has been, and we could start like as so we'll start on like Earth, for example. In Earth, Crash, you can if you remember like the specific names of the levels, you can say it. In Crash to Insanity, remember when they went deep down into the earth with the drills and stuff when they were fighting the ants?
Yeah.
So there's that. So like I like that. So Crash starts off on Earth. Earth is the first, like it's grounded in reality to a sense, and we'll go as deep as we can. Then we'll get to the surface. So the deepest Crash has ever been, as far as I'm aware, is in Twinsanity. I don't think he's ever had. There was a cut level in Crash Bandicoot 1 with a lot of lava and stuff, but I can't really think about a level in Crash where he was like deep down in magma. The only thing that's coming to mind is the Wrath of Cortex when you were on an island with a volcano. Unless you can correct me right now.
There are some places where you're kind of more underground in Wrath of Cortex, but I don't think there's really any indication of how far you are.
Yeah, so I would probably say into Insanity, that was the deepest into the Earth's crust that you were, and then we could go to Crash 2, going higher up. Crash would, or not even Crash 2, Crash Bandicoot 1. and Crash 2, the toxic waste levels and the sewer levels, I feel like those are underground but not quite as far. The sewer levels, when I was a young kid, I didn't realize that the levels actually took place on the islands. So when he was in the sewer levels, I was thinking they were actually like in our sewers, like how the Ninja Turtles are always in the sewers.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can move on up a little higher. We're not quite at the surface yet. In Crash Bandicoot 2 again, the what's the B level?
Behaving.
Behaving. I'm pretty sure there's like 3 levels where you can go underground, just doing like the spin technique on certain soil, and you could dig underneath. And then also in Crash Mind Over Mutant, depending on where you're placed, there are like little spiral symbols on the ground, and you could dig and go underground like that as well. That was by Nina's public school, if I remember correctly.
They're all over the place.
There's more.
There's one there's one near Crash's house.
I don't even remember that. It's been a while. I should play that game again. But yeah, so that covers just underground. And then, so we'll move on to just like grasslands. So, like, grasslands or jungle, that's pretty much every Crash Bandicoot game's starting world.
For the most part.
Yeah. Grass, deserts. We've seen deserts in Crash Bandicoot, The Wrath of Cortex. I think that was the first time we actually had a full-on desert level. And then once we got to the Radical games, the Rhino Rollers area, there was definitely deserts all over. We have something I forgot to mention when we were talking about going underground. In Crash Bandicoot: The Wrath of Cortex, there was definitely mine levels where you were on mine carts. So that's another instance of subterranean gameplay. Jungles, grasslands, deserts. Ice. We've got a lot of snow and ice levels in Crash 2. And then
All over the damn place.
what else is there for just like Earth? Snow, fire, ice, grass. Oh, and then like then we could jump into like actual areas. So like Crash goes to different towns in Crash Bandicoot 4. That I know you like that inclusion in the series.
Yeah, because to me it makes sense that because obviously the islands are pretty fucking big at this point, and they have a lot of variants on them. So to me, it makes sense that certain different areas of the island would be using Mojo differently than other ones. So you have like Papu's tribe being very, traditionally. Trying to think of the indigenous,
Right.
and then you have the more Americanized voodoo style, more New Orleans aesthetic inspired, which is a completely different place on the islands with seemingly completely different people.
Right.
So
So we've got New Orleans style town. We also have in Crash Bash, or not Crash Bash, the game everybody dislikes, Crash Boom Bang. There's actually a lot of city levels. Like one of the first worlds is a big city, which they never say where the city is, but
well, supposedly for some reason it's in Japan.
that city is in Japan.
Apparently, most of it is set in Japan and near Japan.
I know that. Well, you know
Not
that
sure why.
like that. You're gonna have to jog my memory. Was that in game, or you're just saying after the fact? It was
No, they
Because I remember like an ancient tower. Oh, and then there is the volcano. So we were talking about lava earlier. There's a volcano level.
I'm not sure why or like where it was said. I just remember that it was.
So like
I'm
in
not sure where it comes from.
supplemental material, it was saying that was all in Japan, which I guess
I know
works.
the Viscount is tied to Japan somehow.
Oh, okay.
So I'm guessing, like, for if they go to him because he invites them to him, I think that might have been the assumption that I made
Oh, okay.
because he's like, "Come over here." I like don't, and I don't remember where it said that he's in Japan, but I think it was genuinely just something that they like was just a throwaway comment somewhere, and they probably just did it because they were like, "Oh, we're the first Japanese developers to make a Crash game.
Yeah,
What
and
if it was in Japan?"
yeah, and they definitely tried to make it like the Crash Bandicoot manga because they had the whole pinstripe Tawna thing that all the other games kind of ignored. While it wasn't like outright stated that they were a couple, them showing back up in the game at the same time, I feel like it was nodded at. And then in one of the scenes, they show like silhouettes of a lot of anthropomorphic animal people that we've never seen before. There was like a bear guy and a skunk. But yeah, so cities, I guess we've got Japan now. And then like I was saying earlier about the future levels, those are all cities as well. So Crash has been to different towns, different cities. He's also been to an amusement park. That's one of your favorite games, right?
I don't. I gotta be honest with you. Oh, tag team. Yeah, for some reason that doesn't register in my head as amusement park
Motor World, my bad. I should have said Motor World instead of amusement park.
because that's what it is. But like for some reason that just doesn't come to mind when you say that.
Yeah, because that game to me was like one of the continuity wise, I think that was really interesting because as far as humans go, we only see like the core group of the evil scientists. So when we were actually at the amusement park and we got to see all the different humans interacting with Crash, I thought that was really neat. Like in
Yeah,
Crash 4, we've got the epilogue where it shows a bunch of people, but it's very rare that we see just people walking around.
yeah. Because when they're on the islands, everything's a lot more isolated, so it makes sense for there to not be very many outside of the tribes and
Right.
probably the people in the voodoo towns and stuff like that. But like even then, the voodoo town, like a lot of the people that live around there are like mutants that have come from the castle. So like,
And or spirit skeleton people.
yeah. So like a lot of it is just like ghosts and mutants. So like even on the islands, you really only have the tribes and the scientists.
And even then the tribes have been the
They're
Papu
very
Papu's tribe has been absent for quite a while.
they're very skint. There's not a lot of them.
I think it was Crash on the Run. It said that they're in hiding now because of Uka Uka.
Yeah, yeah.
Something like that. So
I think they just didn't want to have them in the game.
so they wrote a line explaining why they were gone. So we have all of that. And then obviously we have like the temples, like Sunset Vista, Temple Ruin, all that stuff. Temples to explore. And then we kind of get into the whole time travel aspect of it to visit other locations. Like for ancient Egypt, obviously we've got pyramids and deserts. Then medieval times, they go back in time to obviously medieval times. and then
you know,
prehistoric times. So,
World War Two, World War One. I don't remember which one.
oh, with
Probably
the
World.
Red
Yeah.
Baron level or the Orange Baron, my mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah, so location wise he's been all over the planet. There's not many other places that I can think of that Crash could go that he hasn't visited yet. The one question that I always have that I always fail to ask people feels like a good topic we can cover right now. In Crash Bandicoot The Wrath of Cortex, Coco makes the VR hub. Why is it called the VR hub? I'm asking you.
Because the hub itself is virtual reality. It's just like a little.
So they are
It's running on a computer. Like the actual space is not real.
so Crash and Coco and Uka are and Aku Aku and Pura all go into virtual reality to
See, I
teleport.
don't see the teleporting is real. They're going to real places. It's just that the warp for whatever reason is like they I guess they for whatever reason they wanted to have a physical space to represent the teleporting.
So they wanted a warp room, but they didn't have a story reason as to why they were going to have a warp room. So they made a
Pretty
VR hub.
much. Pretty much. Then you just type in where you want to go, but like then you don't have the warp room.
Right.
Like
So the Wrath of Cortex, they have they go to Japan as well, and there's that big tsunami, the giant tidal wave coming after her when she's on her little scooter.
yeah,
And there's
it's
also the I don't remember where it was exactly, but she was definitely on a big snowy mountain snowboarding. So
I
that's
don't think they
another.
put a lot. I don't think they put a lot of thought into the themes because some of them are clearly meant to be like. Well, I don't want to say clearly, but some of them are also pretty implied to be back in time too.
Like wizards and lizards.
And like the Japanese levels are like a weird mixture of modern and feudal Japan.
Yeah. And then even in the very first level, there's woolly mammoths, which are extinct.
And then the old timey mining town at the end and the gold rush stuff. And
Yeah. That's why I was questioning the whole virtual reality aspect of it, like if they were actually going to these locations. So,
yeah, because that would just be really dumb though. Is the problem? Like it's like oh these we got these crystals from virtual reality. Then why did you have to like go to virtual reality places to do it? Couldn't you have just programmed them into your hands? Like what?
yeah, just
So
digital crystals.
like there's a lot of things where people are like, oh, I don't think they thought about it much in Crash, and I'm like, I think that's just you projecting. Like, oh, I want it to be like Mario. I don't want there to be much story. Like, I think most of the time it's just people projecting that. But Wrath of Cortex, they did not think
Yeah,
about it.
Wrath of Cortex, you could tell that they they had plans for other things, and then they ran out of time, and then they were rushed, and they did this, and they kind of just threw stuff together because they were on a time crunch. I mean, the opening itself is, oh no, look, we're not doing bad stuff. Look at our chart. Let's be bad.
Yeah, it's just I don't really think they put a lot of thought into like the how and the why. It's just hey, you got to get these.
Yeah.
It's just
Because I remember discussing with you, and I think I made a video on it once, how I said the crystals should have been different colored, so they could have been like actual elemental crystals to actually seal the elementals away, rather than just being the same purple crystals over again.
yeah.
Have 5 red crystals, lock away pyro, and green crystals, blue crystals, yada
Well,
yada.
I mean, Naughty Dog kind of started that because there was debate on whether the crystals in 2 and 3 are even the same crystals at one point. Like, sometimes they're called the time crystals, and then other times, no, it's the power crystals. We're just getting them from different points in time. And I'm
Yeah, and then
like,
when you get to Twinsanity, there's just crystals all over the place.
yeah, I feel like, I mean, it's one of those things that you can make it make sense because it's like, oh, we thought there were 25, but it's not that there are 25. It's just that you need 25 to use the master crystal, and then you could, like, they're actually pretty much fucking everywhere.
Yeah,
And
that
like,
and they, like I said, they have all sorts of different names. Even in Crash on the Run, they're just called purple crystals.
yeah, and
Purple,
then
master, slave, elemental, power, time, and then in CTR they're just flat out crystals. Grab the
yeah,
25
so
crystals to get the token.
I think the smartest thing you can do is just kind of consolidate them and just say that they're all part of the same group of jewels.
Yeah.
Whereas I mean, at this point, like, there used to also be 42 gems very specifically, but now there are not 42 gems.
You know, that's another thing that I've always kind of questioned, but never really outright said it to anyone. You're of the belief that the crystals that Crash Bandicoot collects in Crash Bandicoot 1 end up getting taken away by some means, and he has to recollect them in Crash 2, right?
I uh,
Because the
I don't know.
only time
Like,
in the franchise that it has been like explicitly stated is at the end of Crash: The Huge Adventure. The gems explode because he shoots them with the planetary minimizer, and then in 2 Entrance you have to go collect the gem shards because they blew up previously. But
well,
other than
see, I mean,
that,
at this point, I'm just of the mind that you explain these things by saying, well, that was a very specific set of gems, and then Crash 1 into Crash 2. The only reason that like, to me, those ever had to be the same ones is because, like, Brio makes it sound like, oh, there are 42 of these, and that's it. Like, we need all of them,
right?
and they make a point out of it. But, like, I mean, at this point, it's like the jewels are kind of like, there are a lot of them, and you need a sizable group of them to do anything with them, and it seems like they kind of get, once they're used for something, they kind of get Dragon Balled and shot back out or used up or whatever, and you have to find new ones.
Got you.
I mean, I think that's pretty consistent because
So it's not like, oh, you got the Chaos Emeralds in Sonic, and then, oh no, they're gone again. You got to get them in the next game. You think that they're just
I think
new
they're
sets,
I think they're consumables, for lack of a better word. Like, I think, like, the
like a
Master
battery.
Crystal is probably, like, the only Master Crystal, but, like, I feel like any 25 crystals can be used to use it, and, like, power crystals are powerful on their own.
Mm-hmm.
You just need a lot of them to do anything, and it's like, I feel like they're just consumables at this point, where when you use them, that's it. You need a new one to do the same thing,
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fair enough.
because otherwise it's like, why the fuck would Crash have, like,
Keep
oh,
losing them.
I got all the gems, and I used them to make a bridge in Cortex's castle. I'll just leave them here, I guess.
Yep.
Like, I mean, it kind of does, but, like,
Which,
like,
that's another thing. Like, other than video game mechanics, that's kind of weird that gems just open up giant platforms that float around
yeah.
or bring you
And then
on the death routes and stuff.
it just makes sense to me that they're consumable because there's at this point that's the like it's not the only way you can make it make sense, but it's the best way,
Right.
really.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, I'm pretty sure we've covered every kind of location that Crash has been to on Earth. Um, Now that just leaves like leaving Earth. So we started deep underground, and now we'll gradually go higher up into the sky until we get to space. I know that in Crash Bandicoot 1, which, as far as I'm aware, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's the only case in the entirety of the franchise where Crash Bandicoot can walk on clouds. It's in one of the temple levels,
No,
or the
it's not the
wall,
temple
one of the
level.
wall levels.
Yeah, it's in the second one of those, the native fortress.
You can literally climb on clouds, and you're like up in the sky.
Actually, it's either in native fortress or the Great Gate. Those are the only two, aren't they?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's one of I
I
can
think
never
it's
remember
Native
which one's
Fortress.
which.
I think Great Gate is the first one.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, either way,
so and
I think that's the
then
only time you walk on clouds. Yes.
which we need an explanation. Come on, Big Crash. Come on, Big Bandicoot. Tell us why. So Crash, then he has in Crash: The Wrath of Cortex, he has the helicopter pack, and in Crash 2, he's got the jetpack.
Well, he never really uses the helicopter pack to do anything high up in the air. If anything, like the helicopter pack, he uses it underground.
He did?
He's in, yeah, he's in he's in like a hot lava
Oh
area.
yeah, and there's those like parrot things that would like dive bomb you.
Yeah, like you go through a cave. It's like more underground than it is in the sky. Like, and that I think at one point they were going to have a helicopter pack thing when you're in Wuthering Heights, whatever that like airship is. Well, speak of the devil, talking about sky shit. Wuthering Heights. It's in an airship. Um,
Yeah. Wasn't there
Wuthering Heights.
also there was also
There's also plane
Cor-
levels in that game.
wasn't there one called Cortex Vortex?
Yeah, but Cortex Vortex I just took to be like in. Well, see that's the thing. It can't be in the Cortex Vortex
Right, right,
because
right.
unless he's rebuilt it, that's not in space right now.
Yeah. I didn't actually
Uh,
I think they were just using that as like a fun level title. I don't
yeah,
actually think it was the Cortex Vortex, but that was
especially
also
in this.
like a weathery type level if I remember correctly.
Well, it's kind of just in like a nondescript dark purple lab place. It's you don't really get a vibe for where it's at.
Oh. That wasn't the one where you're going through the tunnel and the mech opens, or you're going through a tunnel. You're riding the mech, and there's like atmosphere coming out behind you, and you had to like
No,
run.
I don't think that happens in Cortex Vortex. I think that happens in.
Wuthering Heights.
No, it's not Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights is I think is level 20. Uh, I'm going. No,
Okay.
the mech chasing you is in Crate Balls of Fire.
Great balls of fire. Okay.
The that like the wall of like fiery plasma like atmospheric shit
And
chases you in
that
that.
wasn't a space themed level or an air themed level.
I don't. It's ambiguously space station themed.
Okay.
I think the whole last hub is kind of like
Ambiguously space.
yeah, like I think it's supposed to be like on the space station from the intro because
Yeah.
the final boss definitely is.
Yeah.
Um, so like Cortex Vortex isn't the Cortex Vortex, but it is in space.
Right. Okay. So that leads us into other space station type levels or locations that Crash has been to because now we've reached the upper atmosphere. So there's the actual Cortex Vortex from Crash 2. There's whatever the heck the name of, I guess it's just called the Cortex Space Station from Crash the Wrath of Cortex.
Yeah, I don't think it ever really had a name. Then you have the Space Head.
Yep. And
Um, that's another thing. Before we go into space, another sky level is the Doominator.
the Doominator, that's correct.
All of Doominator takes place in the sky, even the parts that don't feel like they do.
Right. Doominator, Spacehead, Space Station. And they use that, they use at least that model of Space Station or Cortex Vortex multiple times because in the Huge Adventure that it's back up there. And Crash actually flies off into space on his motorcycle. His space motorcycle. No helmets required. And then there's various other spaceship themed levels, and Coco usually is piloting the spaceship. Like she did that at the end of Crash the Wrath of Cortex. She was the one who flew up and fought Engine and Crash Warped. But as far as Earth goes, I think we covered every location that Crash has been to. Are there any places that you've wanted Crash to explore? Oh, we didn't even talk about the deep oceans. How dare us?
Yeah, I guess that would be lower down
Than the what we did initially. The furthest down would probably be quote unquote Atlantis. I don't know how Crash Warped underwater levels got called Atlantis, but that's what I see everybody call them. The Atlantis levels. And then there's the sub stages in the Wrath of Cortex. Dude, those were awful. Do you remember how terrible those were? You get hit by anything and your scuba machine just explodes.
Yeah, that's probably one of my least favorite vehicle things in the entire series.
That and the hamster ball levels, the Atmosphere, I hated those. Deep oceans underneath the earth, all the different locations.
That's why I like the little Atmosphere nod in 4, because they made it not shitty.
And it was very brief.
Yeah, it was just kind of like more visual than it was anything. Like it definitely feels different than regular Crash, obviously, but like it was because like I like Monkey Ball and like Marble Madness and shit. I just think that the
physics of Wrath of Cortex was generally terrible.
Well, it's not even that the physics are terrible. It's just that the level design kind of like doesn't accommodate it. Like those levels are kind of non-linear in places where they like really shouldn't be because lost. I mean, it's easy to get lost and hard to know where you've been and where you haven't been.
Like you said, you like the Monkey Ball games. I do too. It's a weird line to cross because like you played Spyro Hero's Tale, right?
Yeah.
They had those. You had to balance on a ball in those levels in that game too, and I hated that. That was awful. So I didn't like the Atmospheres. I didn't like the Spyro one, and then even in Mario Galaxy, the original Mario Galaxy, you'd have to hold the Wiimote and move back and forth. But Monkey Ball, they have it down. I don't know why other ball games can't just copy Monkey Ball.
Yeah, it's it is what it is. Even like thinking back to those levels in Wrath of Cortex, like as far as where they're at, like jungle and castle. Yay!
Jungles and castles.
I really hate the ones on the entrance levels. Like I hate like, oh, but you get to play as Crunch, and I'm like, yeah, kinda, not really, sort of.
You're talking about the Atmosphere still?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
fucking that. Those levels are kind of like
Yeah, that's what you
Playing it,
corrected me
playing is
in the last episode of this. I said the only time we ever got to play as Crunch is in the Atmosphere level on the Huge Adventure or on
yeah.
Entrance, and you were like, no, you got to jack him. Which does that even count as playing as Crunch? You're technically playing as Crash.
You're well. That's I mean,
Semantics.
yeah, because like I mean, like at that point, like when I'm trying to think of like a good example of this, but like you're always playing
As Crash or
like
Coco. It's like,
like
no,
when
you're
you're but
actually playing as a motorcycle now.
yeah, but it's I mean it's like you're if you had played as Crunch in Wrath of, or not Wrath of Cortex in Mind Over Mutant and Crash had not been sitting on his back, it would have been the exact same moves. So like
Yeah.
it kind of gets to a point where it's like I think that counts as playing as him, yes. Which
But if you wanted to be a actually guy, you could still see my point of view, where he's just a vehicle at that point.
I guess, but Coco and Crunch in Trance, like that's why I'll never be able to hate on. Like people are like, oh, I don't like that Coco's just Crash, but I'm like, so was it preferable back when they forced you to be her, but she didn't do anything different then either that Crash couldn't do?
Yeah, literally,
Like,
all she did was vehicles and
and
warped. She
that's
was
like, oh, you
Purah,
get
jet ski, and
yeah,
the engine
and
battle.
then Entrance was even worse about it to me because like it's like yeah, you finally get to play as Crunch, but he's not doing anything unique. And it's like I would at that point I'd rather you just make Crunch a little smaller and let me play the Crash levels as Crunch.
Yeah, that would
Like
have been cool.
to me it's better if I'm gonna play as Coco and Crunch, I would rather have them be exactly like Crash and I can use them anytime I want than have them be exactly like Crash but I'm forced to use them in the levels I already don't like.
Right.
Like,
And
but
pretty sure
but
that
the
was. Go ahead.
yeah. So in Entranced, it was especially bad because like the the Atmosphere stuff with like the pseudo 3D, I just didn't like it. Period. So like I got to the point where I associated it with playing as Crunch. I was like, I fucking hate Crunch levels. I'm like, I mean, it's really just Atmosphere levels, but when I would get to a level and see Crunch's face beside the name of it, I would be like, ugh.
Yeah.
Like, which is interesting because, like, as a kid, I remember being like, oh, Entranced is a lot better than The Huge Adventure, which I already liked pretty good. But, like, looking back on it, I'm kind of like, eh. But that's
Yeah.
kind of true of a lot of Crash games where, like, when I'm looking at them from outside, I'm like, eh. But then when I'm playing them, they're fine. Like, like Warped, I hate in my head. I hate all the vehicles. I hate the swimming. I hate the. But then I go play it, and I'm like, oh, I like this.
Yeah, Crash the Huge Adventure borrowed from Crash 2 and Crash Warped a lot, and then Trance was very Wrath of Cortex-y because it borrowed locations and like the helicopter pack and the atmosphere. So it was kind of like the handheld version of Wrath of Cortex. That's how I always looked at him.
Yeah, more or less.
Okay, so have we finally exited Earth? We've got beyond
Probably.
Earth. We were in space around Earth. And then pretty much every we talked about different times. So he's been to different time periods, different locations, different planets, different dimensions. Because that's what you could just say, oh, like the 10th dimension, we only got to experience one island on the 10th dimension, unless we're to believe that the entirety of the 10th dimension is only one island. or one
Well, I
archipelago.
mean,
One archipelago.
well, the archipelago is definitely the only part of the 10th dimension that was narratively
Important.
necessary.
Yeah.
Like,
So you
uh,
think now that we're this far into the series, do you think that there would be a motor world in 10th dimension?
I think there would be. I don't invest a lot of time thinking like, oh, this is what because Von Clutch is already kind of neutral. So like there wouldn't really. I don't think there'd be like evil or good Von Clutch. So like he might be the same there.
Just a different color. Instead of green, he'd be
Yeah,
like red.
but like I don't spend a lot of time thinking like, oh, this is evil Von Clutch and evil Pasadena would definitely exist, and like that's all fun to think about, but like
Yeah,
it's
that's
kind of like it's kind of like sight gaggy at a point where it's like I don't think there's much you can do with that dimension that you couldn't just do some other way,
right.
and which I kind of think they ran up against in 4. Because if you think about it, in 4, only like 2 of the worlds are actually alternate dimensions. Really, I think there's 3.
And even then, like you just
The
said, they don't need to be alternate. It could have easily been
Yeah,
future. This, I assume you're talking about the snacks dimension.
well, I guess there's 4 because there's Snacks Dimension and the I keep wanting to call it Rustland, but like the Wasteland Dimension, like both of those could have just been the future.
Right.
Um, the fucking Tranquility Falls is like one of the only ones that like I think really needed to be an alternate dimension because it's like
Too magical.
it it's like actually an alternate like the point of the place is that it's fucking like weird and
Yeah.
between dimensions. Like I feel like it's not even an alternate dimension, just between them because it like folds in on itself. But then it's not actually a weird place. It's just that Crash gets drugged.
With those berries.
Yeah, so it's a weird place, but it's worse to him than it actually is because he's on magic mushrooms basically. But because if you think about it, towards the beginning, it's not that weird.
Yeah.
It's just like it's again just kind of Japanese inspired,
There's some lily pads and
like feudal Asian
right.
countries, like then the zombie snow world, like that one you could sell me like, oh, this is the islands in the 11th dimension, and there's like zombie fishermen, but then it's not. But they're not zombies because they're fucking alternate dimension fishermen. They're zombies because Cortex makes them zombies.
Right. Which
Like
I did like that because one of the changes they made in the N.Sane trilogy was on a is it slippery climb where the arms come out of the jail cell and try and smack Crash. They were
yeah,
like
because like
they
Cortex
used to be
kidnaps people
like
too.
clawed arms, but now
Yeah,
they're like old men.
yeah, it's like Cortex. Like if you really think about it, Cortex capturing people to do experiments isn't really that far off either. Like
Right.
I mean, they kind of talk about it in the flashback tapes, like in trophies, like oh, stop wasting your time fucking around with animals and shit. Like do some other evil. Look at me, I've got time travel. You should do some time travel shit. It'd be cool. And it's like, I mean, that's not obviously not exactly how he says it, but
Yeah.
that's the mess. That's the message.
He was like,
Like Cortex
"Oh,
probably
look, I am
has.
entropy. I do time travel. I'm so cool."
Yeah, it's like he's and like there's a weird thing where he's like kind of middle management where he's like, oh, Uka's not going to be like he's got a lot of us evil scientists. You could be doing a lot cooler stuff. I'm gonna have to report you to the boss.
Yeah.
But like I feel like Cortex has other shit going on. Like if he had like I feel like that's the kind of villain Cortex is. He like shows up, he sees like, oh, there's a lot of fucking weird, muscly fisherman type dudes here. What if I just made them zombies and like sapped their energy and like he just does that on a whim when he gets there too, which is kind of funny if you think about it. It's not like really super tied into the main plot. He's just like, oh, what if I do this while I'm here?
Yeah.
And it's so like because he's looking for the quantum masks and stuff, but it's just kind of like
He's a
What if I
dickhead.
Yeah, he's like, what if I just make what if I just make a new lab here and it just makes people into zombies?
Yeah.
I just like,
I don't think every single specific
but the
experiment needs to be told. Like when people are like, "Oh,
yeah,
well, where did this person come from, or where did that person come from?" It's like
like I think
Cortex is a
Crash.
bad guy, and he does bad things.
Yeah, like I feel like Crash fans in general, and we talked about this with the continuity shit. Like y'all need to get better at subtext and like filling in the blanks with the obvious, because it's like they shouldn't have to every single time we see an animal character introduced from now to the end of the series forever. Like they don't like. Of course, Catbat was created by Dr. Neocortex or Dr. Embryo or any like. Of course, like that shouldn't need to be said. Like it's great that they do say it, and they're like, oh, but at the same time, it's like, duh, like
And he does so many experiments that he doesn't
like
even remember them all.
and like Crash of the Titans, dude literally makes like thousands of mutants in that game. You think he knows all their names individually? Do you think like
Oh, well, where are they now? They're gone. That means they never existed. I don't see
well,
any of them anywhere, even though they
well
have
this
their own little villages and stuff now.
yeah, they're off doing shit like for some reason the Crash universe when it comes to fans and stuff is held to this impossible lore standard of if it's not in every game then it's a plot hole. And I'm like,
Yeah,
it's like it's like, can you imagine if they fucking like if every time they made a Marvel movie they like had to every couple of minutes they have to just be like, oh,
Hulk isn't here because
J-
he's got diarrhea.
Hulk's got diarrhea, and like every single movie after Endgame, they're like, I don't know if you guys know this, but Tony Stark's dead. like, like
Got to
just
explain where everybody is at all times.
like I don't like, and they tried to address that in Secret Invasion, where they're like, where fucking Fury is like, I want to do it myself. I have to do it myself. I'm obsessed with doing it myself. And then when they do explain it, people are like, "Well, that's stupid." And I'm like, then if they didn't say anything, you would have been like, "Where are the Avengers? Why can't he just call the Avengers to deal with fucking this guy?"
Yeah.
I'm like, and then they fucking explain why, and people are like, that's stupid. Well,
Yep.
then what would be less stupid?
You're damned
Like,
if you do, damned if you don't.
what would satisfy both explanations? Nothing. Just like you get. It's arguably better to me when you get to just make up the reason yourself, because it's like you said, the Hulk isn't here. Well, okay, he must have a good fucking reason, and that's
Yep.
all I need to know. Like the Titans aren't showing up right now. Well, it's probably because narratively it limits what the fuck you can do. If there's just 1,000 fucking rat sickles.
Yeah.
Like, so like they're fucking in their fucking village, which is, by the way, is on an iceberg.
Yeah.
Which it's probably like the iceberg lab. It probably drifted away, or it's like in between the islands, and we don't go there. Like, if we don't go there, why would we see it?
But
Like,
oh god, I gotta mute my mic. Damn, I did a big cough. But yeah,
like
we're kind of getting on a tangent now.
the point is like to go back to the dimensional shit. Like the 11th dimension, it's cool that it is an alternate dimension, but like I guess it didn't really need to be. And that's kind of my problem with all the alternate dimensions in 4 is that like they didn't really need to be alternate dimensions. They could have also just been time related.
Exactly.
Like,
and the game is literally called It's About Time.
And like you can kind of realize like across the game like how many levels are in just the regular universe in the regular dimension because they fucking gave up on writing new ways to say it. You know what I mean? Like they're like they don't write the dimension when it's just like, oh, this is Mosquito Marsh, and like they're like
happened a day ago, or
it's a couple of days ago, and then like when you go to Bermugula and it's in the regular dimension, they're just like, I don't know.
Question mark.
Question mark? Like they're just Cortex Castle, 1996, and it's like
Yeah, it
because so
really.
much like
We're getting back into this whole continuity debate again, but
but like
honestly, the worst thing that Toys for Bob could have done is teased the multiverse. Because
because
if you're
now
not paying attention when you're playing the game, you're not going to realize it's not a multiverse.
yes, and it's like
This next dimension easily could have been the future. It was
yeah, it makes
very
them
it
quite
was
like I don't feel
very
like
similar to the future levels of Wrath of Warped, but now it's like 15 years
like
later, 20 years
all
later,
of
so they
the
could do a lot more with the graphics.
like all of the stuff that happens in the alternate dimensions just is more easily like I guess that's my point. There's nothing about them that actually requires them to be alternate. They just need to be different time periods, or they're kind of like in a different part of the like, or they're just not on the islands. But like,
For example, let me cut you off real quick. In the Snacks dimension, there are signs that say dingoes. Like, there's a Snacks version of Dingo Dial, but we never see him. There's also signs that say
yeah.
Aku Aku.
And like some of the levels that are alternate dimensions have stuff that imply they're not alternate dimensions. Like that one just kind of like implies the whole time that it's just the future. But they go out of their way to say it's a different dimension for some reason.
Yeah.
It's never really used. So I'm like, why? Like you could just say it's the future, and it's like fucking KFC with the fucking like the mascot is Dingo Dial, but he's been dead for 1,000 years.
Yeah, there you go.
Like Colonel Sanders is the mascot of KFC, but I promise you, he's not still there just because they have him on the sign. Like he's not like you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like there's so much in the snacks dimension that could just be it's just it's in the future. So like I feel like that's as far as location wise, I don't feel like dimensions really mean much in Crash. They're kind of just adjacent. They seem to kind of exist both on top of each other and separately. Like the 10th dimension stuff is like
So instead of us being like, oh, well, Crash has been to different dimensions, we could just be like, oh, look, Crash has been to a futuristic city.
like I feel for the
But at the
like
same
in
time,
terms
we all know that he has been to different dimensions.
yeah, I just think for like intents and purposes of the actual locations, there's not a whole lot of difference.
Right.
Like
I
feel like
agree with that.
the the 10th dimension is the only one that's been like meaningfully directly different, and it's more like a mirror dimension than like a different one, right? Like
Yeah, it's like the
it's
negative
kind of
universe or whatever.
yeah. So like, and then there's like waffling on whether Spyro's universe is a different universe or just a dimension in the Crash universe. And
Well,
like,
I've made a video on it. I'll just break it down for you really fast, and you could confirm or deny what you think. In On the Run, there's a Dark Spyro. There's also a Inferno, Frosty, and Oxide Dark Spyro. So that means at the very least, the Spyro realms have their own dimensional counterpart.
so to me, that means that because the Nitroverse is the main Crash universe,
Yes.
the Tawnaverse
Is also in the Nitroverse because it's a different dimension of
so like
the Crash universe.
they call the Tawnaverse a different universe, and then they call all the levels dimensions. At this point, I don't think there's a point in differentiating them. I think just some dimensions are more different than others, right? Like some of them are just like it's the same. Like it's kind of like thinking of like how dimensions actually are in real life,
Mm-hmm.
whereas in fucking fiction they're usually like different places. They're more like layers of each other. So like I feel like when you in Crash, they vary between being layers of each other and being actual like
Variants.
mirror variants. Because like the 11th dimension could very honestly just be like a layer of our dimension, right? Like 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions, they're not different they're not different universes. They're just different ways of looking at the same universe. It's like the 4th dimension is time. If we could move in the 4th dimension, then we could, like, this is kind of an oversimplification, and it comes from a fucking like popular scientist that I'm not super fond of.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you can just think of it this way: like, time is the 4th dimension. If we could move 4th dimensionally, like, say you get stuck in a jail cell, you can move. If you can move 4th dimensionally, you can just consciously move yourself to a time where you're not in the jail cell, and then you're like, I'm free.
Right.
But because you can move in time however you want, you're not locked to like, oh well, now I'm like, you moving to a different time doesn't mean anything to you because you're like, you can move throughout it freely. So it's not like, oh, I went back in time to get out of jail and now I need to make different choices to not be in jail.
You just
No,
went back in time, and now
you're a 4th dimensional being. You just moved yourself in that dimension. You didn't. It's not like you're trapped linearly the same way that we are, because we're 3rd dimensional beings. It's like, it's the same way. Like, if you draw a square on the paper and you put a dot in the middle of the square, it can't get out of the square. But in 3rd dimension, if it was like, if you could reach into it and grab it, you could pull it out of the fucking square because there's no fucking roof.
right.
Like, it's just it's a 2-dimensional space. So like, to me, that's what crash dimensions are. Like, they're just layers on top of each other, and then like, they kind of go into this in Skylanders, in Imaginators, like the convergence shit where the dimensions kind of come together more. And I've like,
Yeah, you're talking about the Wumpa Harvest and the
like Cortex and Ripto, kind of like their whole evil plan in Purple. And by the way, I looked at some of the Purple dialogue and stuff, and like, they don't really explain how the fuck they met.
They don't explain anything.
They don't say shit. So when people are like, when like they're like, oh, Cortex doesn't know who Ripto is in Rumble, then to me that just means Rumble is kind of like, it has to be before that, or like, honestly, the dialogue is written kind of slapdash in those comics. It might
Also, there's
easily just be like,
I know we're getting on another tangent, but the Rumble's whole story is the Wumpa Harvest. There's no reason that every season has to be at the same time. These could all be different. Every season could be a new Wumpa Harvest, and you could fit it in between other games or something.
And they're not doing any more content updates, so like, we know that's not going to change. So you can lock Rumble in place now. It can be where it fits. Like,
you don't think we're gonna get a final comic?
We might. If we do, I think it's probably not going to like it's not going to be like, oh, this is exactly what happens next.
It's just going to be like, hooray, Wumpa.
Hey, here's like, I don't like. It's supposed to happen today. Well, not today, but it's past midnight.
Right.
So, like, it'll happen.
It's 4th. Supposed to happen at like what,
later,
noon,
in like 12 hours from now.
Yeah.
But like, so I don't know what's in it. They say 104 new items or 105 new items, whatever. So I'm assuming basically everything that was going to be in the battle pass as an unlockable for season 4 that they had ready is just going to be the tail end of the new super battle pass. But point being, like, how this ties into the dimension shit, like, in Rumble, Ripto and Spyro and Allura come through a Mojo-based portal the same way as anybody the fuck else, because like, you can argue that the teleporters in Crash 1 and in Crash 2 especially are Mojo-based, not science-based. Once you get to the Time Twister and stuff and the VR hub, then obviously that's sci-fi teleportation.
Mm-hmm.
But like, they came in through like, the Rumble ones are sci-fi and Mojo, as Ripper Roo explains with his fucking PhD. Like, arguably tell me that like, anything that Cortex is doing, he's using the fucking Mojo shit, period. Because like, But that's a different. That's starting to get headcanony, and I don't want to get headcanony on this. I'm just saying, like they come in the same way that anything else comes in.
Well,
And
the relic stations were the relic station. Like, so you think whenever they were using the relic stations, they were like summoning Oxide with Mojo?
there, I mean, that's relics are mojo jewels, same as crystals and gems. Like they don't. I don't know why the fuck we need them at any point because I think all they ever do outside of Rumble is like unlock doors.
Yeah.
But like um, in Rumble, they're used as like a power source, the same way as anything else is. So I mean, they are mojo infused. So like to me, and then Ripperoo again says something about the mojo systems in it. So like my point overall is the Spyro universe, dimension, whatever the fuck you want to call it, is connected to the Crash one the same way any fucking thing is.
So the Spyro realm is essentially a dimension
Part of whatever
itself, but it's not a dimension,
yeah,
but it acts the same way as a dimension.
like it's connected the same way, and like I think basically the differentiation between a dimension and a universe in Crash boils down to whether it's like a layer or whether it's like truly alternate. Because I think Spyro is so different that I think you'd call it an alternate. But the Tawniverse is more like an alternate timeline, so I think you'd call that a universe. The
We've
10th
never been
dimension,
to the Tawniverse, though.
well, when Crash and Coco die, and Tawna becomes the hero, and
So you
Cortex doesn't
think
seem to be
that the
really involved.
Tawniverse was pretty much a copy paste of our dimension, or of the Nitro universe?
I think it's just like I think universes in Crash and dimensions in Crash are basically the same concept. It's just the word implies the scale of differentiation. So like a dimension is kind of like more similar than an alternate universe. But like the Tawniverse is not just like an alternate version, it's completely different in flow of time and events, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the 10th dimension is kind of the same as ours, just inverted. Cortex still made Crash. It's just Cortex was good, Crash was evil.
Yeah.
Like they just like they had the same flow of time. They just were mirrored. They're kind of more dimensionally similar. Whereas the Tawniverse is kind of like flat out a different fucking timeline.
Yeah.
So like Spyro is flat out a different fucking timeline, uh, entirely. And then you have like the other thing is that Skylanders, The Legend of Spyro, and Spyro have been hinted over and over at different points in time to be the same universe, just different points in time. So, like, the Crash universe is obviously flowing in a different flow of time than
Because
the
Crash has
Spyro universe.
encountered
Because,
all of the different Spyros.
yeah, and this is not like this is an Easter egg. It's not actual lore, but in The Legend of Spyro, Crash is frozen under the ice at one point in the
Yeah, and
second
the
Legend of
Eternal
Spyro
Night.
game. So like,
I actually just released a video about that, and I said,
so like to
in the far off future where Crash has retired from his heroing, he gets sent to that dimension and he's frozen under ice for the rest of eternity. Either that or
so
it's
like
an Easter egg that doesn't matter.
yeah, so like you can take stuff like that and argue like all of the Spyro universes, even though they're tied together to each other and flow linearly in time, like the time for them for like Spyro universe, like a long ass time is like 2 or 3 minutes in the Crash universe.
So when Spyro comes to visit Crash, when he goes back, months have passed.
like like I wouldn't even say that it's a different flow of time. It's just that like when they touch like the different because apparently and I so again apparently and I haven't really looked into this but like the idea of time like in terms of physics is that all time exists, right?
Correct.
So all time exists that has existed or will exist because time is it's linear to us, but it's not but the point I'm trying to make is like all time exists. So when the Crash universe touches the Spyro universe, it doesn't always touch it in the same time.
Oh,
I
like
started to say,
I know what
so
you're
like,
saying. So
so
if
like
you
I
have
don't
like
think
two
that like
frisbees and you rotate one frisbee and touch it to one point on the other frisbee, if that
kind
makes
of
sense.
like it's not that they flow on a different scale of time. It's just that every time they've touched, different time is touching different time. So like it's not that like oh fucking a blink of an eye for Crash is 500 years for Spyro or whatever. It's just that
The
you know
the
that
the
that
means
happened.
through how they connected are connecting
Yeah,
at different time frames.
yeah, and the only fucking weird thing about that is Aku Aku calling Skylander's Spyro Crash's old pal.
Yeah.
But that could just be an old 5,000-year-old plank of wood with a fucking sentience in it being wrong. Like,
I think I
I
actually
think,
said that in my timeline video. I was like,
I
yeah,
mean, to
he
him,
says
it's like,
Spyro, your old friend, but I'm pretty sure that's a different Spyro.
yeah, because it's like, it's they're related
It's
because they're from
just
the Purple
old
Dragon lineage,
it's
but
just
it's just
old Grandpa Aku Aku being confused.
he's like, I don't know, dude. It's been like 20 years since you saw that dude, and like he's purple, he's a dragon. I don't know how they age. Like
Yeah, this one
he
kind of looks like
calls
a
himself
frog.
Spyro.
Maybe he's going through puberty. Who knows?
Like we saw a dragon before, and that dude was huge. Like this dude's like what, fucking 3 feet tall. Like you don't know what they do, what puberty's like for them. Because like if you think about it, that's like Crash has seen dragons before Spyro,
Dude,
and they're
it's
like,
like you watched the video I just posted. Because I literally say that. I was like, yeah, he rides a dragon in Dragon Drop on Crash Bash. In Crash Bandicoot 4, he encounters all these different dragons. In Crash the Wrath of Cortex, he
there's
has
like
the
a big
giant
ass
dragon
dragon
that
in Wrath.
chases
Yeah,
him. I said, arguably, when Crash first sees Spyro in Crash to Insanity, he probably doesn't even know who Spyro is. He doesn't talk to him, he doesn't interact with him. For all Crash knows, that's just another dragon. He's just been seeing
yeah,
dragons. It's not
yeah,
until Crash
yeah.
Purple that they actually team up.
Yeah. And as you know, I always say that the Game Boy Advance games should be after Twinsanity because there's no reason they can't be, and they fit right in there. And like, and the argument is always, where was Crunch? Where was this? I'm like, he was busy,
Yep,
like we
that's
discussed a
how I
minute
have it
ago.
in my timeline. You know what? I'm actually
But
gonna put it up on screen right now. Yeah. So here's the timeline. I have it on my timeline. I have it goes the original trilogy. Then it has the 99X, Crash 4, CTR, Crash Bash, and then I don't go to the handhelds. I go Wrath of Cortex, Twinsanity, and then after Twinsanity is when I do the handheld games, Huge Adventure and Entrance, which I'm pretty sure
yeah,
that's what you were just saying.
yeah, I don't have mine on this hard drive. I
Mm-hmm.
have like a document written out, but like it's basically that. And then you go to fucking like Nitro Kart and shit like that. But the point was like as far as like they're kind of similar and like just little minor differences, and it's just kind of like a layer on top than a dimension. Like I think the Egapus dimension is probably just a layer on the regular one. To me, that didn't need to be a dimension. It could have
Could
just
have just been a
been,
time period. Yeah.
yeah, especially because they call it BCC before Crash Bandicoot. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, but then like something like the Tawniverse where time played out very differently there. That you can, or that I'm fine with people saying universe. I just think that like they're pretty much kind of the same thing. It's just dimension and universe mean how different it is. Like I think they even kind of fuck with that in the like the Marvel shit where it's like some variants are just fucking the same actor. Like
Oh
all of
yeah, like when they
like
went to the purged area and they saw
yeah, and then
alligator Loki.
and then other ones are fucking really different. And like that's kind of like what if is, right? But like even then you think like in the back of your head like it's all part of the same quote unquote multiverse. It's all part of the same thing. It's
Right.
just different. It's different layers of the same thing where things are happening differently because, again, time exists at all times. Like, so it's kind of it's every possibility is always there. So, like, in theory, we could go to the fucking. They'll never do this, but I'm just saying. Like, I'm saying this to illustrate what I mean.
Uh-huh.
Like, the Sonic universe is a dimension in the Crash universe because they've shown that the dimensions and the alternates in the Crash universe can be dramatically different. So like there's a universe where fucking Cortex is Robotnik and Crash is Sonic. And
Oh,
it's just
okay.
like I that's not canon. That's
Right, right,
not
right.
something they're ever going to do. But I'm just saying like everything exists. It is all part of the same thing. Like it's not like time exists in time. So like the spaces, the nomenclature, dimension, universe, timeline, whatever, is just telling you how different it is. It's not telling you like it's not like oh it's actually a totally separate place. So like in terms of like location, I think Agapus dimension is basically about the fucking same as the fucking prehistoric time period from Warped. Like they're not so different of places that they should count as like a different kind of location. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, like it's the other side of a coin of the same time period.
Yeah, like it's the same kind of idea. So like I don't think that like we can say, oh, but this one's actually a different dimension. And I'm like, yeah, but like visually and as far as like what happens there and like the stuff that is there, it's kind of like it's lava and overgrown plants and rocks and dinosaurs. Like I don't like it's a different location, but it's not really a different location. And like we said it at the beginning when we talked about all the ice levels, we kind of glossed over all of them because they are kind of the fucking same, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like Ratsicle Kingdom is different from Iceberg Lab because they go out of their way to be very different. Like it's like this is where all the Ratsicles live, and this is where this happens, and this is like this, and this is like this, and these have got buildings and stuff, and like culture. And then Iceberg Lab is just an iceberg that happens to have a lab in it in one area.
Right.
But like Agapus Dimension and the fucking prehistoric time period and Warped are basically kind of the same thing. So like there's not really a lot of differentiation there. So like that's kind of where it plays into the location stuff. And as far but to wrap the location talk up, locations that they haven't done that I would like them to do. I've always wanted like an actual like city
Like
where like it's
Jack and Daxter.
no
Well, I
like
meant Jack 2
Mario
rather.
Odyssey. Yeah, but like not even like that. Like not street level. Like I'm talking like Mario Odyssey, where like it's like kind of rooftopy, like some of the city levels in like Donald Duck going quackers, where like you spend most of your time on the roofs, but then you go down on the streets a little bit, and
Oh, okay.
like the New Orleans level kind of like touch on that, but like it's not the same because like it's like there's a parade going on and there's like all this stuff that like prevents you from like doing much city stuff.
So you mean like a sandboxy kind of?
Like not sandboxy, just like regular Crash level, just set in the city, like Future Frenzy, but like before it gets that far into the future,
Oh, okay.
like rooftop level, where you're like, I've always wanted that. Like I've also always this is kind of cheating, but like I've always wanted them to do like the Nitro Kart planets, but as platformer levels.
Dude,
It's
me
not
too. Especially
that's
in
not
Nash's.
it's not new locations, but it's a different way of seeing those locations.
Yeah.
Um,
Like the phenomena levels. That would be
yeah,
an awesome world to explore.
like if they did more stuff with like hyperspace, where
Techne
like
and
because like right now, every time we see hyperspace, it's usually just like, oh, here's some rocks and a piece of temple floating in the void. But like, if they leaned more into it and they're like, this is where the ancients actually live, and like,
yeah.
it's an actual place, like that'd be interesting. Honestly, outside of that, there aren't very many places they haven't gone. So like, I'd like to see new takes on like ones they've already done. Like, I'd like to see like Sunset Vista, but like expanded. Like what like the dark places inside the temples from Crash One. Like if we got to go back there and like did it in a different way.
Yeah.
Like people are always complaining like, oh, we need to go back to just being on the islands. I'm like, most of the levels in all the games are on the islands. The islands have been fucking whack and weird since Crash 1 and 2. Like Crash 2 especially. Crash 1 less so. Crash 1 is more like desolate and jungly and like overgrown, but like that's because Crash takes like a straight shot through them.
Yeah.
It's not because those other places still exist. You even see some of them on the map. You just don't really go to them. Like the fucking snow caps and stuff. And then like it's like I would like to see more of like those dark, dingy, like ass cracks of the islands again. Just because I feel like they've been a little too happy go lucky cartoon in the most recent stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because even in the radical games, which people like to be like, oh, the radical games are so stupid and funny and too goofy. And I'm like, the environments weren't they had fucking dark, creepy places. They had scary places, fucking industrial, like oppressive places. Like if anything, I think in retrospect, you can kind of say that radical as far as like understanding like the islands. I think they understood the islands the best after anybody who took over after Naughty Dog
Oh,
because
easily.
the islands are like very much like they were in Crash One. They're dingy. They're fucking kind of shitty. like
Yeah, the
like
temples are falling apart.
Cortex's crap is dumped everywhere. Like it's a shit show. Like they very much understood what the islands were in the original Crash games. Like you still get your pretty places like the Ratsicle Kingdom and the Iceberg, but like they they understood the assignment. Whereas I feel like some of the other developers, like Traveler's Tales and stuff, were very adamant about their like being a cartoon game. And I love Toys for Bob. I love Crash 4, but like I even love the Voodoo Town and shit. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with the way it looks. I don't think it looks out of universe or out of style or anything like that. But like I think we haven't had enough dingy, dirty crap in Crash for a while. Like I think that's why Cortex Castle at the end of the game hits so hard for so many people because that really leans into that fucking like shittiness.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is not a fucking pretty like upkept fucking Cortex Castle like you see in like CTR. It's the castle from the first game. It's a piece of shit. It's falling apart. It's very clearly set uh in the fucking shittiest parts of it. Like if this is what it looks like on the inside in 1996, imagine what it looks like after it's burned down. And like you kind of see that in the tapes. Like in 1997, they're still like using the castle, but like it's shittier in the Coco tapes than
Yeah.
it is in the Crash tapes. Like because it burned down.
Yeah.
Like it's like you Coco's one of Coco's tapes is like there's so little of the castle still left standing by the time you get to the last Coco tape that like it's mostly outside
And
because the castle is like
people are like, oh, the Coco tapes don't make sense because the castle got burnt down in between the games. And it's like, yeah, have you played the flashback tapes?
like it's shot to shit. There's none of it left by the time you get to the part where she leaves. Like it's like there's nothing there, dude. Like she's almost outside for most of it. But like so I would basically locations in the future. I think they've done all the themes that they can really do. I think the way you get around it is you go back to old ones and like look at them from a different angle. and you mash stuff together. Like that's one thing I think Wrath did that I liked is like you could start a level and you're like outside in the mountains, and then by the end of it you're in the fucking sci-fi shit. I think that's why, even though the 11th dimension I don't really feel like needed to be a different dimension, it was interesting that like you go through the fishing village and you get there through the snow caps, and then you go to the lab, and then you go to the fucking the blimp at the edge of the island, and it's like
Yeah.
there's a progression. I really think they just need more progression because
So
Crash
I've
4
got
is
I've got 3 locations that I would really like to tackle, but 2 of them I don't even know how it would even be tackled, to be honest. So Crash has been, we've already said, deep in the ocean, on the planet, up in space, dimensions, time periods. He's been everywhere. The only places that we haven't seen Crash is the afterlife, which we know there is an afterlife because of his death animations. But I don't know how they would handle that, or how it, like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, how could they handle an afterlife in Crash? The only thing that I could think of is, have you ever played Super Paper Mario?
yeah.
Yeah, they had the underwear and over there, and it was clearly heaven and hell. And Nina's Nightmare is like the closest thing to hell that I could think of. Like, just,
Yeah.
like, do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Like
I
Tim
mean,
Burton-y looking and stuff.
there are ways to do it. You could definitely tie it into the ancients and stuff too.
Yeah, so I would really like an afterlife. And then the only other thing that I really, really like crave for the Crash Bandicoot series, this is really hard to pinpoint too because it's not like just one location. In Crash Bandicoot The Huge Adventure, they shrank the world, right?
Yeah.
So the gimmick is, hey, we shrank everything, but literally everything was shrank. So it wasn't like you were shrunk because everything else was shrank too. I
Yeah.
want a game like where you, Honey, We Shrunk the Kids, like you actually get shrunk down. So like a pencil on a desk is like a big freaking tank, like something like
Yeah.
that. Like I want Crash to visit not the macroverse or whatever, but still just to for him to get smaller. So I've always thought of games like how Sparks, they have the little Sparks missions in some of the Spyro games, or the Minish Cap from Legend of Zelda, like stuff like that. Like I would, that's something that I've always wanted for the longest time, and I've had like fan games in my head, like Crash Bandicoot Zero before Evolution, and it's just like a little Bandicoot trying to get around and trying to run away from lab assistants and stuff. So as far as location, how you could cover that, it would just, it would be everywhere, but it would just be a different take on the locations, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So the afterlife and a small verse, I guess you could say. And that's those
You
are
want
the 2 locations that I would personally love to cover in a future installment.
this just made me realize something, by the way.
Go ahead.
You know, I'm gonna. This is the last thing I'm gonna say, then we'll end there because we fucking wrapped up the locations talk.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
People are always like, I've rewatched like as a kid when Cortex gets shrunk and put in Crash's brain, and people are like, "Well, how did he get out?" Like to me, like as a kid, I was always like, he picked him out with his finger and he wiped him on his pants. And like I only let other people convince me it was ever a plot hole later on, right?
Uh-huh.
So like to me that was the gag. Like why the fuck else would he do that with his fucking finger? That's the whole point of the joke to me. But then like then people if you convey that, they're like, but how did he get big again? And I'm like, this just blew my fucking mind. We both put the handheld games after Twinsanity now, right, in our timelines. Cortex comes up with the planetary minimizer after he makes a ray that makes him big again. And he's like, oh shit, what if I made one that did the reverse? That's where he comes up with the idea for the minimizer. He's like, oh shit, I could just turn this the other way around. What if I was really big and everything was really small?
Yeah,
Then I could conquer the planet.
I actually said that in my timeline video.
Like he comes, Crash wipes him off on his pants. He's like, well, shit, what do I do? I'm
Uh,
really I'll make a ray gun that makes me big. And then when he's done, he's like sitting around. He's like, oh shit, I'll flip the polarity, and then I'll be big.
and everyone
Everything
else
else
will
is
be
small.
small. Yeah.
And then there you go. But see, that's the thing that I think people forget when you like have something where the continuity is kind of ambiguous. Ambiguity doesn't leave holes; it leaves opportunities. Because you can explain that, and if you write it down and they fucking like canonize it, then that's, you know, that this fucking obscene hole that people have been fucking talking about for years can like, it gives you more opportunity to come up with goofy lore shit
Yeah.
in retrospect, because you know where you're ending up now. Like we have 28 years of Crash stuff, so we're kind of like, we can kind of like be like, this is how this can attach to this, and this can attach to that, and that, and that, and then everything, all your ducks are in a row, and there's somewhere to go from there. And it's just kind of interesting because now you have all the ways to put that shit together. But I'm not going to waste another half an hour fucking talking about continuity because we have to.
But yeah, so we covered all of the locations, and then the ones that we would like to see in the future are a smaller version, an afterlife, and then a city. And then just revisiting other locations and putting different spins on them.
Or expanding them, like hyperspace, because hyperspace is always just like a room.
Yeah, it's always just that one temple.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you'd like to plug before this episode ends?
Just the usual crap. Go look at Anton Blast coming this year. Almost said the real release date. Whoops, can't say that yet. Coming later this year for Nintendo Switch and PC, and at Summit Sphere on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and yada 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 yada, and that's it.
Okay, everyone, we had fun, and we hope you enjoyed too. Take care.